What's up, guys? So I wanted to put a video out today about fat loss. I am just hanging out at home during this time where a lot of us are not working, letting the beard grow. You're probably never going to see it this long again. So I wanted to make a video about rapid fat loss, fasting, but more so in this case, specifically a protein sparing modified fast. And basically, how fast can you lose fat? So if you've been in the fitness scene for a long time, you definitely know who Lyle McDonald is, and you know that he put out a book called Rapid Fat Loss a long time ago. This book was basically a protein-sparing modified fast. Now, if you look up a protein-sparing modified fast in the research literature, you will find it to be different than what Lyle put out. Lyle basically made it so that how can we lose fat very fast while retaining as much muscle as possible. And I think he did a good job writing the book. If you haven't looked at it, if you haven't picked it up, I would recommend going through and reading it. But I just kind of wanted to give a general idea here, not just of that book, because obviously I don't want to take away from what Lyle has done, but also just protein-sparing modified fasts in general, and people who basically do crash dieting and go to very low levels, and what you can expect from that. So I've done that a few times myself. Either just because I was curious to see what would happen and maybe I was in a maintenance or a bulking phase and then I just wanted to have some quick, rapid fat loss. I've also done it towards the end of a cut when I found that I was really starting to stall and you almost needed to get to those drastic measures. And that's something I'm going to talk about later in the video, is how really, when you're really looking at the numbers that you're doing for this, they might not be so different than what some people are doing in a contest prep towards the end anyway. So before I get into the details, let's just get a general overview of what the diet is. The diet is basically a very low calorie diet that is aimed at losing as much fat as possible with a generally high protein intake to maintain as much muscle as possible. Now, obviously, I would personally recommend working out even if you're drastically cutting for a short period of time. The reason I even feel the need to point that out is because some people will talk about not exercising and not really doing any workouts while having such low calories. The reason being that they say if the calories are so low that you're really not going to be able to recover from the workouts at all, and therefore you should just lose the weight, lose the fat, and then get the muscle and lean body mass back later. I can see the reasoning behind that, and I would say if you are just starting out in your fitness journey, if you are very overweight, I could see an argument to be made for just getting into the diet first and maybe just doing some basic walking and things like that before you're really going hard in the gym. But for most people, especially if you've already been a serious lifter, I would obviously recommend to continue lifting, but to cut the volume back quite a bit. You know, if you're doing 4, 5, 6 workouts a week, I probably would not recommend that. You could probably get by with 2 workouts or so per week. And when I say workouts, I mean weight training workouts. As far as cardio goes, usually you wouldn't want to do a ton of cardio during a phase like this. Again, something low intensity would be fine. Now, when you're looking at the calories here, it's basically going to be what are your protein requirements, and then minimal carbs and fats after that. So this is where it gets interesting for people like me who have been lifting for a long time and other people with a decent level of muscle mass. If you looked at my podcast with Lyle McDonald, he talked about the formula for rapid fat loss, right? And when you actually look at it for an experienced lifter who has a decent amount of lean body mass, it still only comes out to be at a rate, his was for a rate of weight loss, it still only came out to be about 1 to 2 pounds per week, you know? But yes, if you are new to lifting, if you are very overweight, then yes, you can lose a lot more quickly without the fear of lean body mass loss. Now, this is more extreme than what Lyle McDonald had talked about, and this goes into, even for people like me, losing at quite a rapid rate to begin with. But again, you want to make sure that your protein is covered. So what do those protein numbers look like? And I'm going to post that up here. So as you can see in Lyle's book, he breaks it up into category 1, 2, and 3 based on body fat percentage. So if you are category 3 and you're quite overweight, then yes, you can get by on maybe 1 gram per pound of lean body mass for your protein. However, if you are decently lean, you could be going 1.5 to 2 grams per pound of lean body mass. So for somebody like me, let's say I started cutting at 200 pounds and I was, let's say, 20% body fat, so then I'd have 160 pounds of lean body mass. That would mean that I need 240 to 320 grams of protein. Okay, so if you do the math, 4 calories per gram of protein, you're looking at roughly 1,000 to 1,200 calories just from the protein. And of course, most protein sources of food have some fat in them. So then you're looking at, maybe let's say a little bit of fat, so maybe 50 grams total. Then you're looking at some carbs from the vegetables you're eating. And ultimately, this rapid fat loss could still be 1,500 plus calories. So I want people to understand that very rarely, for somebody who's experienced, are we really advocating maybe like 1,000 calorie diet. And if it was, it would be for a very short period of time, which is another thing to consider that I'll get into. But as you can look at the chart, category 2, you can afford less protein, category 3, even less. And again, this is just looking at rough numbers for you to maintain as much muscle as possible. Now, as I said, there's going to be stuff other than protein. So you're really not going to be looking for any direct sources of carbs. Fats, it would maybe just be some fish oil, and that would mostly be it for this period. Now, if you're a category 1 dieter, if you're somebody who is lean already, then you're really not going to want to be doing this for very long, maybe a couple of weeks. Whereas if you are a category 3 dieter, you're, obese, then you could do this for a while. You might want to do this for a month, maybe even 2 months, take a break, do it again. And that's really not that uncommon. If you look at a lot of weight loss strategies out there, they often start somebody with a very rapid rate of weight loss to start because it's motivational. They're saying, hey, wow, I've lost 10 pounds this week. I was 300 pounds. Now I'm down to 290. To tell somebody who's 300 pounds that they have to go down to 299, then 298, then 297 is I want to say, frankly, kind of ridiculous. When you're that heavy, you can afford to lose fat more quickly. So you have a kind of initial boost to your diet, some motivation. Wow, I'm already looking a lot better. I've lost that initial food bulk. I've lost that initial water weight. And now I'm really starting to actually shed some fat. The other time to use it would be if you're stalled, right? So this is kind of what I was mentioning before, is if you've been dieting for 12 weeks and you brought your calories down from 3,000 to 2,600 to 2,200, eventually to get really lean, I look at myself and I can maintain calories, or I can maintain my weight on 3,000 to 3,500 calories, and I can pretty much just maintain around 200 pounds. But I can't just drop that to 2,800 and say, well, now I'm just going to keep losing fat. My body adapts very quickly. And so right now, I'm roughly maintaining on 2,400 calories, even though I'm not that much lighter. I'm about 193 to 194 right now. And so for me to then lose more fat, I really need to drop to about 1,800 to 2,000 calories. Now, that's still to get, the maybe 1 pound of fat loss per week or weight loss per week. Obviously, I could maybe have 2,100 and lose very slowly. But in that case, it's like I'm already suffering. I would rather just suffer a little bit more and actually get noticeable fat loss. So again, if you're really dieting hard, you might just get to what some of these numbers are. And I've had that when I have 1,500 calorie days, that basically looks like a boatload of vegetables, maybe some like chicken broth to try to fill me up, and then protein sources. And that will get me losing fat pretty quickly. But when you actually look at the numbers here for people who are very experienced or have a lot of muscle mass, it's still not like the protein sparing modified fast that you might read about in the literature of 400 to 600 calories. That would usually be reserved for a short period of time for people who are closer to being obese. Kind of just a side tangent off of that. I think it's interesting when people say that they don't count calories for green vegetables. There was a dieting coach back in the day, well known, Ken Skip Hill, and he said things where it's just like, this is one of those examples where I feel like the fact that you're on a lot of gear is really letting you get away with things. Like he would say that if he had a craving in the middle of the night during a contest prep, he got up one night, had a giant scoop of peanut butter, but he didn't count those calories because it was a craving. And I'm just like, that's not really how it works. But one thing he said that I think is reasonable is that he wouldn't count green vegetables. Now, the thing is, do they really matter that much? Well, if you're consistently eating anything, you don't necessarily always have to count it, right? It's all about a reduction in calories relative to where you were before. So you could just say, well, every day I eat a bowl of oatmeal, and I just never count the bowl of oatmeal. Well, if that bowl of oatmeal is constant, then it doesn't really matter. When you try to cut, if you're still having that bowl of oatmeal, you're just reducing from everything else. So the calories are still dropping. But you have to consider that when you do start dieting, you tend to ramp up how much you're having of these low-calorie things. So somebody might have 5 ounces of vegetables when they're bulking, but when they're cutting, they're starving. And they might have 2 pounds of vegetables throughout the day. So that might go from 50 calories or 40 calories during a bulk to 300 calories when you're cutting. Not that that's this huge deal, but it's something to just be aware of. That yes, if you're really starving, have a ton of lettuce, fill up on broccoli. It's probably fine, especially if your calories are so low as they are with the, any type of protein sparing modified fast or rapid fat loss like we're talking about here. But I would consider that vegetables still do have calories. They still count as calories. Your body can still use those calories. So not to fear vegetables, obviously. I think that's a great way to get full, have fiber, have nutrients, but don't think that they actually count as 0 calories. Now, if you are going to do a diet like this, I do think you really have to be more careful with the types of foods that you're choosing. What I mean by that is that when you're bulking up, if you're eating 3,000 plus calories or even 2,000 calories, you're probably getting most of what you need. But if you're dieting down and you're eating literally like on this diet, some people might have 1,000 to 1,500 calories. You have to be a little bit more careful to make sure you are getting the vitamins, the nutrients that you need. For example, I might recommend a bowl of yogurt or cottage cheese during this time to make sure you're getting calcium, just as one example. Like I said, I would maybe supplement with fish oil during a time like this. I think things like this actually can be very useful. It used to be kind of feared in the community where it was like, no, 1 to 2 pounds per week and that's it. I really think if you've been doing this for a while, you can afford to lose weight quite quickly. I mean, if you look at some people, think Steve Hall from Revive Stronger recently, he dropped from 200 pounds to 180 in I think it was something like 10 weeks, so that might have been 5 pounds, 4 pounds, 3 pounds, 2 pounds, 2 pounds, 1 pound, whatever that looked like over the 10 weeks. It was pretty quick, and he maintained his size, he's maintained his strength. My first 4 or 5 weeks on this diet, I dropped from 205 to 195, maintained all my strength. That initial weight loss can be pretty quick and you can maintain the majority of your muscle there. So I wouldn't fear a rapid fat loss period, but I would not suggest chronically being on super low calories without a refeed or a diet break or something like that for an extended period of time. Now, the last thing I want to kind of finish up on is circling back to what I mentioned before with the actual workouts. So if you are going to do something like this, if you're saying, you know what, I really want to lose fat as fast as possible, I've got something coming up in 4 weeks and I would legitimately like to lose a good 6 to 8 pounds of actual fat in that time, maybe even more for some people, not just weight loss, but actual fat loss in that time, then I would say stick to maybe 2 full body workouts a week, or you could do maybe an upper lower split, but I wouldn't do an incredible amount of volume. Keep it on the lower end of what you can do to maintain, maybe as little as 4 up to maybe 8 sets per body part. Again, just a general recommendation. Obviously, it's going to depend on the person. As far as strength loss that might occur, in the book, Lyle talks about how there's not going to be strength loss, that you're not going to lose muscle in that amount of time. And, it's been a little while since I've read through the whole thing, but I think that's roughly what he talks about. For me, whenever I've done it, I have noticed some strength loss, but you have to consider that that's generally going to be pretty temporary. You can get that back, especially if you go into a diet break, like a full maintenance period diet break after something like this. But secondly, you also have to consider how much would you have lost when you lose that fat through a normal diet. What I mean by that is, okay, so you lose 8 pounds in just a few weeks. Well, you notice some strength loss. If you had done that over 8 to 10 weeks and gone really slowly, just by being in a deficit, you might have still lost some strength. And so was what you lost actually more with the protein sparing modified fast than it would have been over the 8 weeks with the other diet? Or did it just seem like a lot because it happened so quickly? So that's something to consider as well. Personally, again, if you're advanced and you're really lean, I would be hesitant to do it too long because I do think there can be legitimate issues. But again, if you're advanced and really lean, you're really not going to be that low in calories because the protein is going to be so high. And again, it's for a short period of time. So guys, I do think this is something that can be helpful for people. I would make sure not to fall into a bad habit with a diet like this. What I mean by that is if you have any sort of bad relationship with food, this can make it pretty easy to justify having crash low days and then binging. Or saying, you know what, it's fine, I'm going to do this in a week or so anyway, so I'm just going to eat whatever I want, I'm going to eat like crap, and then I'm going to make up for it with these extremely low calories. That is not the purpose of it, obviously, and so I think it can be utilized. I would say probably almost every year I have some period of time during a cutting phase where I utilize something like this, but it's certainly not like a go-to. It's not something I do all the time. It's a specific diet for a specific purpose, so just keep that in mind if you want to try it. So guys, if you watched this video and you liked it, you got anything out of it, I'd love for you to give it a thumbs up. That really does help the channel. If you subscribe, that's really appreciated. And any questions you might have about similar diets like this, post them down below or send me a DM on Instagram. That's at Dave_McConey. And I will try to get to pretty much everything I usually do. So appreciate you guys watching. And like I said, feel free to reach out.